3 years ago, I couldn't remember if I'd brushed my teeth that day. Now I'm packing lunchboxes, remembering library books, and coordinating after school activities for two little humans who once couldn't even hold their heads up. The whiplash of motherhood seasons is real. One moment you're staring at your reflection, wondering where you went, and the next you're confidently managing school runs and friendship dramas. In today's episode, I'm taking you through the emotional peaks and exhausting valleys of motherhood, from those foggy newborn days to the structured chaos of primary school. Understanding these transitions might be exactly what you need to find peace in whatever phase you're weathering right now. Remember when you considered it a successful day if you managed to brush your teeth before noon? Let's rewind to those hazy newborn days. Those early weeks when you glance at the clock, realize it was 3 o'clock and you were still in your pajamas with unwashed hair and a vague memory of maybe having eaten something that day. The physical demands of those early days hit you like nothing else, don't they? That bone-deep exhaustion that coffee just couldn't touch. Your body's still healing from birth while simultaneously learning to care for this tiny human who needed you for absolutely everything. Those nights when you'd rock your baby at 3 a.m. by the soft glow of a nightlight, the tiny fingers wrapped around yours, both of you existing in a world that felt separate from everyone else. And whilst everyone around you cooed and said things like, cherish every moment, and it goes by so fast, most of us were just trying to survive hour by hour. That constant internal monologue, is she breathing? Why is she crying? Is this normal? Am I doing this right? Will I ever feel like myself again? The overwhelming responsibility of keeping another human alive when you barely felt equipped to look after yourself. There's something uniquely simple about that newborn phase though. Success had such clear parameters. Baby fed, baby clean, baby occasionally sleeping. You celebrated the smallest victories. A 4-hour stretch of sleep felt like you'd winning the lottery, and a shower became a luxury spa experience. Eating a meal with both hands, that was just pure decadence. Time existed in the strangest warp during those days. The hours between 2 and 6 stretched into eternity when you're pacing the living room with a colicky baby. Yet somehow those first 6 weeks vanished in a heartbeat. You'd look down at your baby and suddenly realize their newborn clothes no longer fit, and you couldn't quite remember when that happened. There's an intimacy to the newborn bubble that's unlike anything else. When your world contracts to just you and this tiny person, the quiet moments in the middle of the night when it felt like you were the only two people awake in the entire world, the way they'd sleep on your chest, their little heart beating against yours, how you'd count their eyelashes and marvel at their perfect tiny fingernails. And then there's this identity shift that happens almost overnight. One day you're just you with your career and hobbies and social life, and then the next you're suddenly mum before anything else. Your previous life feels like it belonged to just someone else entirely. You catch yourself in the mirror wearing a shirt covered in milk stains and wonder what happened to that woman who used to wear matching underwear and meet friends for spontaneous long brunch dates. But even in those challenging times, there were moments of pure magic. The way their entire hand wrapped around your finger, the newborn smell, the first real smile that wasn't just wind, the total dependence that created a connection unlike any other. As our children grow, the rhythms change. The predictable cycle of feed, change, sleep gives way to more complex needs. The physical exhaustion of those early days transforms into new challenges, emotional support, developmental milestones, and eventually helping them navigate the wider world. Those foggy newborn days form just the beginning of our ever-evolving journey through parenthood. Between the foggy newborn phase and the school years lies that whirlwind period we call toddlerhood. Just when I thought I'd conquered the ultimate challenge of keeping a newborn alive, my little one developed the uncanny ability to move at lightning speed, having absolutely no sense of danger. It's like she was suddenly possessed superpowers, but lacked the instruction manual on how to use them safely. Do you remember that moment when your baby first crawled or took those wobbly steps? That milestone marked the beginning of your transformation into a human safety barrier. The physical demands of motherhood evolve dramatically during this phase. The peaceful hours of cradling a newborn vanish, replaced by a perpetual state of motion, your body becoming a mobile training camp for preventing disasters. Your determined explorer seems intent on creating. I'll never forget the day I turned around my back for literally 3 seconds, only to find Maisie starting to climb up the bookshelf, grinning with pride at their climbing achievement. My heart raced as I carefully coaxed them down and hands trembling at the near disaster. That constant vigilance is exhausting in a way sleep deprivation never prepared me for. You develop that like maternal radar that somehow detects silence from across the house, the universal warning sign of a toddler mischief. Our bodies as well endure so much during these years. We're essentially like amateur athletes, I think, like squatting, lifting an increasingly heavy child, twisting into impossible positions to retrieve toys from under the furniture. My back muscles developed more strength during toddlerhood than I reckon any gym routine ever gave me. The emotional landscape spans exponentially too. These small humans experience enormous feelings with minimal vocabulary. The wonder of watching language bloom, those precious first words expanding into sentences, comes packed with spectacular meltdowns over broken bananas or the wrong coloured cup. The same child who sobbed inconsolably because their sandwich was cut wrong will moments later throw their arms around your neck with heart-melting sweetness. Daily life becomes an endless masterclass in teaching basic human skills. How to use a spoon without wearing the lunch. Why crayons are for paper and not walls. And the complex social concept that we don't lick strangers at the supermarket. That was one Maeve still struggled with. Each small victory in independence, like shoes on the right feet, toilet training, meals that mostly reach their mouths, it all moves us forward. There's profound beauty in how these little beings explore with such determination. Every puddle demands jumping. Every button needs pressing. Every boundary requires testing. Their relentless curiosity simultaneously exhausts and both inspires. Those spontaneous I love yous moments amid the chaos, they become these emotional anchors. That first unprompted declaration of love from both my girls remains unmatched by any subsequent declaration I've ever received. Sorry, Mark. As their words multiply and as their emotional understanding deepens, these kind of chaotic days, they gradually transform. So each new skill and expression becomes the foundation for that next developmental leap. And I found it's like unconsciously preparing both of us for the adventures of the school years ahead. So some of those small victories of independence were like the stepping stones to something bigger. That moment when you kneel down to adjust their tiny backpack and watch them walk into school without you marks one of the most motherhood's significant emotional shifts. It's that first time your child has a life that you don't fully witness, and that contradiction of feeling simultaneously heartbroken but also relieved becomes a defining feature of this new season. I still remember clutching both my girls' tiny hand at their first drop-off, and the door just looked so big as we were approaching a classroom. She looked up at me with those uncertain eyes before the teacher gently beckoned her inside. And that walk back to the car alone felt surreal. After years of just constant companionship. I always had someone with me. And the silence, oh my God, the silence practically just echoed around me. This newfound freedom, like it arrives, but it's wrapped in like this complicated, like emotional packaging. So those first few hours to yourself after years of like constant togetherness, it feels liberating, but disorientating. The guilt can be overwhelming. Should you be joining this in separation? Is it normal to miss them desperately, but also relish having a cup of coffee while it's still hot? I feel for many of us, this kind of emotional complexity takes us by surprise. We've spent years fantasizing about having just 5 minutes to ourselves, only to discover that when we finally get it, our hearts feel just hollow. When I read a really interesting article by a psychologist, Louise Remond, about this contraindication. She explained that like adjusting to the new routine takes time for kids, but also mums, and how important it is for mothers to give themselves space to find this feet in this new phase. Kind of when I read that, like her words felt like almost permission for me to breathe through these feelings of, what's particularly challenging during this transition, and witnessing your child form relationships and experiences completely separate from you. Like after years of being their entire world, suddenly they're coming home talking about friends whose names you've never heard and doing activities that you've never witnessed. I kind of feel like it's the beginning of them having memories that you won't share. Try not to cry. This separation, I feel like it introduces an entirely new parenting challenge. It's kind of this next stage of helping them process experiences that you didn't witness. So their emotional responses can sometimes seem, a bit disconnected. They might be unusually quiet or suddenly emotional, and you're trying to piece together fragments from this tired 4-year-old who can't explain what happened hours ago. I found as well the preschool routine in the mornings demands significant organization skills. That morning rush, remembering which day is show and tell, trying to navigate the subtle social codes of the school gates. You're also suddenly thrust into this parent community. Mothers who engage with this. I actually read this. Mothers who engage with other mothers in the community report less isolation during this transition. And I do think that's true. Mums who I suppose in a similar way you kind of seek out. And I feel like it's another good way you try and explain this to other mums. And there's probably a lot of mums feeling like this, I suppose, just lost. And, and that's okay. Because I feel like the most bittersweet part is just watching them grow in that confidence daily. That child who used to cling to your leg all of a sudden is gradually transforming into someone who runs into the classroom without looking back. And it's that independence that you've been working toward for all these years. But honestly, Mum, it doesn't make it any easier to witness. Like, it's so hard. But these, preschool days, they lay some amazing foundations for not just the education, but for your journey as a mum, that learning to let go little by little. Like this is where both of you sort of begin practicing that delicate dance of separation and then that reunion. And that's going to continue throughout their school years. I feel like separation anxiety gradually subsides. So most mums kind of, they eagerly anticipate their child starting like proper school. It's like the, beginning of a more manageable season. What if everything you've heard about the school years giving you your life back is actually a myth? Like the reality of the school morning logistics might be the biggest surprise of your parenting journey so far. So do you remember standing at the school gates that first morning, when they first go to school, their pristine uniform, the sleeves that are too big, the brand new shoes, that massive backpack that made, your little one even smaller. There's something simultaneously heartbreaking and hopeful about that moment. Watching them walk into a world where you can't follow. What nobody warns you about is that organizational boot camp that school thrusts you into. This idyllic vision of having 6 peaceful hours to yourself quickly evaporates, with like all these permission slips and forms, reading records, remembering which day is sport, which day is library, any news days, all of these things. School demands a level of organization that makes early motherhood phases look surprisingly straightforward by comparison. I feel like it's adjusting to this new routine of school life will take time. And yeah, we need to allow ourselves space to adapt to this increased demands placed on our time and headspace. The validation feels particularly important, I feel, when you're about 3 weeks in and you're still forgetting the library book. The school's like to-do list grows every day, packing bags, signing reading logs, organizing before and after school care, making sure they've done their homework, all while managing your child's post-school exhaustion and trying to like get any information from them about their day. The mental load, I feel like it's a lot to handle with the complex emotions that come after navigating as well any playground politics. We're not there for that. So it's kind of, we have to try and get out of them what's been happening and when you're not there to see what's gone on. I still feel as well that, with the subtle judgment that comes with school life, it's kind of your parenting feels like it's put on display. It's like, did you remember to bring that gold coin for pajama day? Oh no. Oh God. Look at Maisie and Maeve's mum. Is their homework completed? Because at the end of the day, mum will get into trouble. Does your child, is their speech up to date? It's kind of, there's these unspoken pressures to just be perfectly organized and never forgetting like a school event or, God forbid we send some chocolate in the lunchbox. Like, many parents, like they do believe that having a child start school will lighten their load. And you know what? It does. I do feel like though you're trading one set of demands, with swapping nappy changes and constant supervision for this other complex calendar of activities that need massive planning. Like the exhaustion during this phase, I feel like is more mental and it's just this constant organization, emotional processing, and all of these kind of admin tasks. Like after managing the morning rush, like worrying about them all day and then handling the afternoon emotions. But yeah, once they're finally in bed and then when your little one returns, they're often completely exhausted and just emotionally overwhelmed. That sweet, reasonable child you dropped off might return as an emotional power keg, ready to explode at the slightest inconvenience, leaving us unprepared for like that intensity of post-school meltdowns. But here's what nobody tells you. There actually is an unexpected freedom that comes with school life. School-related tasks consume much of your free time, but the structured school day provides, I suppose, predictable hours, for work, personal interests, hobbies, or simply just having a cup of coffee while it's hot. There's something liberating about having dedicated blocks of time that belong just to you, even if they're shorter than you initially imagined. It's like that strange contradiction of motherhood, kind of, as our children grow, we gain back pieces of our independence. Like we find ourselves aching for what we've lost. That toddler who never let you shower alone is now too busy for cuddles. And suddenly the memory of those interrupted showers don't seem nearly as frustrating as it once did. Feels like a connection you can never get back. Have you noticed this peculiar trick on our minds? I feel like our minds play tricks on us, these seasons of motherhood that once had us counting down the minutes until bedtime now appear bathed in this golden light of nostalgia. Like our brains perform a sort of maternal amnesia, like old photographs, like fading at the edges, while the central image grows more vivid, where the screaming matches over socks somehow transform into the precious memories we'd give anything to relive. I found myself caught in this yesterday. I was scrolling through photos from when my youngest was still in nappies and tears just welling up as I looked at her little chubby toddler legs, and the same legs that used to kick me awake at 5 o'clock, and the same child who had the supermarket tantrums. You know, she had me questioning my life choices, but yet here I was feeling a genuine ache in my chest at the realization, like, I'll never feel that weight of her sleeping body against mine. As I transferred her from the car to the cot, this emotional paradox, it's actually documented. So like our memories, it's like scientifically proven that our memories filter out the hardest moments of early motherhood. And it just kind of preserves the sweeter experiences instead. And it's why we can look back at these phases that brought us to our knees with exhaustion and somehow miss them terribly. I feel like the conflict is real, like trying to feel that simultaneously relief that certain difficult stages are behind us. But then I feel like I'm also mourning their passing. There's something about that. There's something physical about the nostalgia. This, I feel like it's like a tangible ache, that catches you off guard. For me, like there was one day, like I found this tiny baby sock behind the washing machine. It was a sock that like my eldest Maisie, who's now 5, wore as a baby. And I just remember picking it up and sitting on the laundry floor, holding it, and just remembering. But the thing is, I didn't get sad. I just remembered how I used to get so frustrated when these socks would disappear. The triggers can be overwhelming, like the smell of baby lotion that transports you instantly back to those early bath times, reigniting the emotions we thought were safely tucked away. Maybe the most surprising part is catching ourselves saying those very phrases that we once used to roll our eyes at, but it's enjoy every moment because it goes so fast. I remember hearing that when I was in the thick of sleep deprivation and thinking it was the least helpful advice possible. Yet I feel like I'm here finding those exact words, tumbling from my mouth when I meet new mums. Like what's happening when we experience this conflicting nostalgia? Like this paradox is kind of like revealing something profound about how motherhood seasons, they shape us. Those challenging phases that we struggle through, they actually often become our most treasured memories, precisely because they represent periods of this intense growth, connection, and love. Like think about it. The hardest moments in motherhood are often when we're most fully present. We're giving everything we have. There's this raw authenticity to those struggles that leaves an imprint on our hearts. Those are the times we were needed most essential in our children's lives. And I feel like understanding this emotional pattern that it's offering us is a gift because it helps us recognize that today's struggles, whatever season of motherhood we're navigating, that will likely transform into tomorrow's fond memories. The challenging phase you're in right now, one day you'll look back on parts of it with a shimmer, with beauty you can fully appreciate in the moment. While we're busy counting down to bedtime or dreaming of the day our toddlers can dress themselves, we might be overlooking something extraordinary. What if the phase you're desperately trying to survive actually contains treasures that will never be available to you again? There are actual gifts hidden within today's chaos that disappear once your child outgrows this season. I've been thinking about this a lot lately as I watch, my 5-year-old develop her own social circle, and then my 3-year-old, discovering school and with this still wide-eyed fascination. But every phase we move through offers something precious that just simply isn't accessible in any other season of motherhood. It's like chapters in a book, each with it's got its own unique pictures and that can't be found anywhere else. Like the newborn phase, you've got the sleep deprivation and the endless feeding sessions, but it gives us this irreplaceable gift of pure presence. Like there's something sacred about those quiet night feeds at 3 o'clock when your baby's tiny hand curls around your finger and it feels like the two of you are the only people awake in the whole world. Your entire focus just narrows to this tiny, tiny human in your arms and creating this bubble, and like no one else exists. And that intensity of that connection happens in a way that can never, ever be replicated ever again. But then the toddlerhood arrives with its beautiful gift of wonder. And, my 3-year-old transforms, the garden into a discovery expedition, and like we're looking at ladybirds and leaves and raindrops as they, racing down. And it's such a thrilling time. And they invite us to, slow down and rediscover the magic in, the mundane life of, we just have to pause long enough to enjoy them. And then as they grow into the preschool years, these children, like, they give us the gift of these emerging conversations. I love the moments when Maisie comes home from school and her face is lighting up as she's explained, something she's learned at school about like, flowers need to drink water. And she's so excited to tell me. And these surprising and, profound little exchanges are unique to this age as well, because it's too sophisticated for babies, but it's still wonderfully unfiltered compared to what comes later. Then something remarkable happens at school, as they enter the school years. What we might mourn the loss of their constant presence, I feel like we receive the gift of witnessing them, their blossoming independence. But there's nothing quite like watching your child develop friendships and interests that have nothing to do with you. Like my 5-year-old now has little inside jokes with her school friends that make her giggle at dinner and opening a window into his expanding world. And I feel like as our kids develop this independence, like I feel like as mums, we receive this unexpected gift too. We begin to reclaim part of ourselves that may have been temporarily set aside, returning to careers, rediscovering hobbies, or just simply remembering who we were before we became mummy. What's fascinating about this journey is how each season trades one form of connection for another. We move from the intense physical closeness of babyhood, where communication happens through touch, tears, and smiles, to the rich emotional and intellectual connections found in the school years. The arms that once cradled your newborn now wave goodbye at the school gate. But the conversations you have when they return home grow increasingly complex and rewarding. The challenge, of course, is appreciating these gifts while we're in the middle of them. When you're exhausted from chasing a toddler or managing a preschooler's emotional meltdown, it's hard to recognize the unique beauty of this moment. But what if, instead of just surviving until bedtime, we paused occasionally to identify the particular gift this season offers? Beyond the gifts, each season lies perhaps the most disorientating aspect of motherhood, our relationship with time. There's a peculiar phenomenon happening in homes across the country where mums experience minutes that drag on for ages and years that disappear without warning. Understanding this time might be the key to finding that peace in whatever season you're currently navigating. Have you ever sat in a quiet house after finally getting your little one to sleep, wondering how a single Tuesday could possibly feel so endless? Yet somehow, when you look at photos from just a year ago, it's shocking to see how much has changed. This strange distortion of time isn't just in your head, it's a documented experience that most mums share. What makes mums' relationships with time so unique is how dramatically it shifts based on what's happening in the moment. Think about sitting in hospital with a sick child and those hours just stretch into what feels like days as you watch the clock tick painfully slow. Or then consider those precious moments where you're watching your child master something new and suddenly an hour has vanished in what felt like minutes. The emotional intensity of these experiences, I feel like they're altering our perception of time. A recent study, I found this really interesting, showed that when we're engaged in emotionally charged moments, whether it's watching a child take their first steps or handling the 10th meltdown of the day, our sense of time warps in response. So the emotional intensity of parenting can significantly affect time perception. Moments filled with high emotional states can like stretch time, while mundane moments can compress it. This explains why, challenging phases like sleep training and feels like interchangeable are happening, yet, register at brief chapters when we look back. What's happening is how this relationship with time evolves as our children grow. Once they start school, our entire calendar transforms. We measure life, in terms and holidays, like January to December becomes a natural rhythm of family life, creating a framework that somehow makes the years accelerate even more quickly. Those first day of school photos many parents take each February tell the story. When placed side by side, that transformation is startling. The uniform that completely swallowed them in kindy barely reaches their wrists by year 2. And these visual markers force us to kind of confront how swiftly time moves, even when individual days feel like marathons. This time kind of creates a unique form of this maternal whiplash, You're caught between wanting the difficult phases to end, but then wishing we could freeze other moments forever. And it's completely normal to count down to bedtime after a challenging day. I've done it. We've all done it, and then later the same evening, feeling nostalgia when we're scrolling through baby photos. And I feel like researchers have observed this of like, this simultaneous wishing for the next phase, but then longing for the past. And it's so common against mums. And, without realizing it, we develop like a maternal clock, right? That operates differently from the one we've used before we had kids. We might be surprised, when childless friends comment on how quickly their summer went by, when for us it felt like an eternity of entertaining bored children. We might be shocked when someone points out it's been 5 years since an event that feels recent. Like, how did you navigate this strange time warp that stretches minutes into hours, yet compresses years into moments? Like, could embracing both the endless days and the years be the secret to finding joy in whatever season of motherhood you're experiencing right now? Mindfulness, I feel like it does offer a powerful way to stay present. But obviously there's another approach that might truly transform your experience. What if I told you that finding peace doesn't require mastering every challenging moment, but instead it comes from understanding something fundamental about the nature of motherhood? So understanding the seasonal nature of motherhood has completely transformed how I navigate my parenting journey. When I recognize that each challenge is temporary, whether it's sleep deprivation, toddler tantrums, or school transition, I feel like I approach it with more patience and perspective now. And this awareness helps me appreciate the unique gifts each stage offers while reducing the presence to perfectly manage every moment. When my daughter started school this year, I felt blindsided by the emotional contradiction. 1 minute I was relieved to have a few hours to myself, and then the next I'd be scrolling through baby photos with tears streaming down my face. And I know so many mums have experienced this as well. And I did find myself wondering, like, why had no one prepared me for this emotional roller coaster? Like, I've noticed, like, mums, mothers place immense pressure on ourselves to enjoy every single moment. But, like, honestly, let's be honest, some moments are genuinely difficult and not enjoyable. And this pressure kind of, I feel like it does create this guilt spiral when like challenging situations arise. And, it does make us like interpret our struggles as personal failings rather than the natural responses to circumstances. Like the breakthrough comes when we accept, I feel like that each season has its hardships, and that struggling, it doesn't indicate a failure. It doesn't mean you're doing a bad job, if what you're going through at the minute feels really hard. It is probably just a hard season, and that's okay. I'm sure you are doing the absolute best. Like, it's crucial to challenge unrealistic expectations and to remind yourself that struggling doesn't equate to failing. Your struggles aren't evidence of this inadequacy. They're simply part of your current season. And I feel like recognizing these patterns across different seasons does help put challenges into perspective. You know, when I remember when Maisie had a meltdown about her school shoes, like I can see now, you know, this was a part of a particular developmental phase rather than a reflection of my parenting. You know, like I found it helpful just to pause during the moments and simply name the season, like, all right, okay, she's getting upset. This is the learning independence phase, or, you know, this is the boundary testing season. And connecting with mothers in different seasons provides that good perspective. Like that mum with teenagers, she's assuring me that a 5-year-old won't still be having homework meltdowns at 15. That kind of is nice to have that reassurance with other mums. And when I chat with a new mum, I feel like I can share my wisdom about the sleep deprivation that once it does seem endless, but, you know, it's not. And these kind of connection create like a, you know, a shared experience that can help us all feel less alone. So when we truly understand, you know, motherhood's cynical nature, like we stop wishing away difficult moments. And I feel like we begin recognizing them as temporary visitors. You know, we become more patient with ourselves and our children, and we appreciate each season's unique gifts, whether it's your preschooler still holding your hand everywhere or your school-age child now reading you bedtime stories. Like, have you noticed how easily we fall into the trap of comparing our experience to others? And this comparison is robbing us of appreciating our unique journey. Like, your path to motherhood doesn't need to look like anyone else's to be valuable and beautiful. And so we come to the end. I managed to get through this without tears. But looking back on these different seasons of motherhood, like I've learned something I wish I'd understand sooner. Each phase, no matter how challenging, it truly is temporary. And every phase brings these unique gifts that helps us grow alongside our kids. Like I've found myself caught in that, you know, paradox of simultaneously surviving the present but already missing it. And each chapter of motherhood holds such beautiful moments hidden among the chaos. So like tonight, as you close the day's chapter with your little ones, take a moment to truly see them. Notice what makes them uniquely themselves right now. What tiny treasure from this fleeting season will you hold close as you both transform together? Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Real Mummy podcast. Remember, every mum's journey is unique and you are doing an amazing job. Please be sure to head over to our website at www.realmummypodcast.com to stay up to date with the latest episodes and dive into our recent blog articles filled with even more wisdom and stories. We absolutely love connecting with our listeners, so don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Real Mummy Podcast. Join the conversation, share your thoughts, and become part of our supportive mum community. And I'd love to hear from you. Have you got a topic you want covered? Do you have a guest you'd love to hear from? Reach out to us through our website or social media. Your input is invaluable and helps us to create the content that matters most to you. Thank you for being part of the Real Mummy podcast family. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind to yourself, and remember, you're never alone on this journey. You've got this.